They say the past has a way of catching up with you when you least expect it. My name is Victoria, and this is the story of how one evening changed everything I thought I knew about success, revenge, and moving forward. 7 years ago, I was completely different. Fresh out of art school, living in a cramped Brooklyn studio with dreams bigger than my bank account. That's when I met Ryan Blackwood, a smooth-talking gallery assistant who swept me off my feet with promises of artistic stardom and love that would conquer the world. Ryan had this way of making everything sound possible. He'd walk through my tiny studio, gesturing at my paintings with theatrical flair, telling me how he had connections, how he could make me the next big thing in the New York art scene. "You're too talented to be struggling like this, Vic," he'd say. "Let me handle the business side. You just focus on creating." I believed him completely. I gave him power of attorney over my work, signed contracts I barely understood, and trusted him with every decision about my career. For 6 months, it felt like a fairy tale. Ryan would take my paintings to important meetings with gallery owners, coming home with stories of impressed collectors who wanted to see more. But the breakthrough never came. Instead, rejections poured in, harsh, dismissive letters that crushed my spirit. Ryan would comfort me, telling me the art world was cruel and competitive. "Maybe your style is too avant-garde," he'd suggest. "Perhaps try something more commercial." Slowly, he began chipping away at my confidence. My bold abstracts were too experimental. My colors were overwhelming. With each criticism, I found myself changing my work, trying to please invisible critics. The end came suddenly. I returned to our apartment to find Ryan packing, a blonde woman I'd never seen sitting on our couch like she owned the place. "Victoria," he said without looking up, "we need to talk." The woman, polished, expensive clothes, smiled with barely concealed pity. "You must be the artist Ryan told me about." "I'm Stephanie." My stomach dropped. "Ryan, what's going on?" "I'm leaving. Vic, Stephanie, and I are going to Los Angeles. Better opportunities there." "What about us?" "My career?" "Everything you promised." Ryan actually laughed. "Your career?" "Be realistic." "I've been trying to sell your work for months. Nobody wants it. Your style is too weird, too personal. You're never going to make it." The words hit like physical blows. "But you said the galleries were interested." I lied. I was trying to be kind. "The truth is, you're just not good enough. You're a small-town dreamer who thought she could make it in New York." Stephanie stood, smoothing her designer dress. "Ryan has real vision. He's wasted here promoting this." She gestured dismissively at my paintings. "I'm taking a position at Meridian Gallery in Beverly Hills," Ryan continued. "Stephanie's father owns it. We're building something real, not chasing impossible dreams." "What about my paintings?" "The ones you took to galleries." "Oh, those?" "I threw them away months ago. Nobody wanted to see them twice." The casual cruelty nearly brought me to my knees. Months of work, discarded like garbage while he let me keep believing. "You're making a mistake," I whispered. Ryan paused at the door. "The only mistake was wasting 2 years trying to make something work that never would. You're not an artist, Victoria. You're just someone who paints." They left me surrounded by my remaining artwork, completely broken and utterly alone. But sometimes rock bottom becomes the foundation for everything that comes after. I made a decision that week that changed my life forever. I was done being the naive girl who trusted others to define her worth. I was done letting someone else control my destiny. I enrolled in business school while continuing to paint. I studied gallery management, art investment, marketing, and finance. I worked 3 jobs, sleeping 4 hours a night, subsisting on determination and instant ramen. Every rejection, every condescending comment from Ryan became fuel for my transformation. I learned to see the art world as a complex business ecosystem. I studied which artists sold, why certain galleries succeeded, how collectors made decisions. I networked relentlessly, attending every opening, auction, and industry event. 5 years later, I had my MBA and enough saved to open a small gallery in Chelsea. I called it Elevation Arts, focusing on emerging artists, people like I used to be, talented, but overlooked. But I wasn't the same person. I had learned to be strategic, to read people, to spot opportunity. I discovered a gift for identifying artists on the verge of breakthrough, understanding market trends before they happened. Within 2 years, Elevation Arts was featured in Art Forum and the New York Times. I had launched 12 artists who were now showing in major museums. My own paintings, refined through years of study, were selling to collectors I never could have imagined reaching. I had become everything Ryan said I'd never be on my own terms. That brought me to this moment, standing in the VIP section of the Maddox Museum's annual gala, wearing custom Valentino, watching New York's elite bid on artwork I had helped promote. It was the biggest night of the art calendar, and I was no longer an outsider. I was adjusting my diamond bracelet when I heard it, that familiar laugh that used to make my heart skip, but now made my skin crawl. I turned, and there he was, Ryan Blackwood, standing near the bar with a drink and that same arrogant smile. He looked older, softer around the edges. His expensive suit couldn't hide that success hadn't been kind to him. The confidence seemed forced now, like a tired performance. Next to him stood a redhead who looked bored, checking her phone while Ryan gestured at a nearby sculpture. "Can you believe they're asking $2 million for that piece?" Ryan was saying loudly. "I've seen better work from first-year students. That's the market these days, all hype, no substance." The woman, Melissa, I gathered, nodded absently. "How much longer? This champagne is giving me a headache." "Just a little longer, sweetheart," Ryan replied, desperation creeping into his voice. "I need to network. Gallery business is all about relationships." I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. I was debating slipping away when fate intervened. Claire Whitman, the museum's chief curator, appeared at my elbow. "Victoria, there's someone I want you to meet." Before I could protest, she was guiding me directly toward Ryan's group. My heart pounded, but I kept my expression neutral. 7 years had changed me in ways beyond appearance. I had learned to control my reactions. "Ryan Blackwood," Claire announced cheerfully. "Meet Victoria Sterling, owner of Elevation Arts." "Victoria, Ryan runs Meridian Gallery in Los Angeles." Ryan's face went through shock, confusion, then panic before he recovered, extending his hand with a practiced smile. "Victoria, what a surprise. It's been a long time." "Indeed it has," I replied, taking his hand briefly. "How are you, Ryan?" "Very well. The gallery's been incredibly successful. We represent some of the most exciting emerging artists on the West Coast." Claire beamed. "How wonderful that you know each other." "Ryan was telling me about amazing pieces they have for auction next month." "Really?" I turned to Ryan with polite interest. "Which auction house?" Uncertainty crossed his face. "We're still finalizing details. You know how these things are." "Absolutely. Although I'm surprised I hadn't heard about it. I try to keep track of major auctions, especially West Coast emerging artists." Ryan's jaw tightened. "It's more intimate. Private collectors, very exclusive." Melissa rejoined us, sliding up to Ryan expectantly. "Are we ready to go?" "I have early yoga tomorrow." "Melissa, darling," Ryan said through gritted teeth, "we're in the middle of business." "But you promised only an hour, and it's been 2 already," she whined. Claire looked uncomfortable. "Well, I should let you get back to enjoying the gala. Victoria, don't forget our breakfast meeting tomorrow with the Steinberg Foundation." After Claire left, awkward silence settled over us. "The Steinberg Foundation," Ryan said carefully. "Quite impressive. They don't work with just anyone." "No, they don't," I agreed. "We're discussing a $20 million acquisition for their permanent collection." Ryan's eyes widened. "That's fantastic." "Which artist?" "David Chen. Perhaps you've heard of him? Featured in art forums several times this year." I watched Ryan's face as I dropped the name. David Chin was one of my biggest successes, an artist I'd discovered painting Queen's murals who now had work in major museums worldwide. Of course, Ryan said quickly. Chen's work is distinctive. It was clear he had no idea who David Chin was. I'm surprised you haven't tried to poach him, I continued with a slight smile. Artists of his caliber are always in demand. We prefer developing our own talent rather than stealing, Ryan replied defensively. How admirable. That's exactly what I tried to do starting out. Though some artists are more committed to growth than others. The barb hit its mark. Ryan flushed and gulped his champagne. Speaking of growth, he said, trying to regain control, I'm expanding next year. Looking at New York spaces, establishing an East Coast presence. How exciting. The New York market can be challenging though. Very competitive. You'd need substantial backing. Money isn't an issue, Ryan said quickly. Several investors are interested. Melissa suddenly perked up. Wait, I thought you said we couldn't afford the Malibu apartment because the gallery was having cash flow problems? The silence was deafening. Ryan's face went white, then red. Melissa, he said through gritted teeth, that's private. But you literally said yesterday. Melissa. I felt familiar satisfaction mixed with pity. Cash flow can be challenging in any business, I said diplomatically. Ryan nodded gratefully. Exactly. It's about managing ups and downs, strategic decisions about when to invest. Absolutely. I remember those early days well. When I first opened Elevation, there were months I wasn't sure I'd make rent. But you figured it out, Ryan said, gesturing around the elegant gala. This level of success must have taken incredible determination. It did, but I had excellent motivation. Something in my tone made him look at me more carefully. Motivation can be complicated, he said slowly. Indeed. Sometimes the best motivation comes from unlikely sources. We stared at each other, and I could see him working through the implications. Victoria, he said quietly, perhaps we could. Victoria. There you are. I turned to see James Morrison approaching, immaculate in his tuxedo, wearing confidence born from old money and good breeding. James was one of New York's most eligible bachelors, heir to a shipping fortune, Harvard-educated, and genuinely one of the kindest people I'd ever met. James, I said, my face lighting up genuinely. I was wondering where you'd disappeared to. Got cornered by Mrs. Ashworth and her thoughts on modern sculpture, he said with a wry smile, then looked expectantly at Ryan and Melissa. James Morrison, meet Ryan Blackwood and Melissa Parker. Ryan runs a gallery in Los Angeles. James is on the Metropolitan Museum Board and chairs the Morrison Foundation's Arts Committee. I watched Ryan's eyes widen as he processed who James was. The Morrison Foundation was legendary, $2 billion in endowment, instrumental in funding major art acquisitions. Mr. Morrison, Ryan said eagerly. What an honor. I've followed the Foundation's work for years. James shook his hand politely but briefly. Thank you, though I give most credit to our advisors. Victoria here has been instrumental in helping us identify emerging artists worth supporting. Victoria works with the Morrison Foundation? Ryan asked, voice strained. Victoria doesn't just work with us, James said, slipping his arm around my waist. She's our lead contemporary art consultant. Some of our most successful acquisitions have been based on her recommendations. Hey, if you're loving this story and want to never miss an epic adventure like this, hit that subscribe button right now. Your next incredible journey awaits. That's incredible, Ryan managed. She has an extraordinary eye, James continued. Last month, she convinced us to acquire a piece by an unknown artist for $300,000. It was appraised yesterday at $1.2 million. I felt Ryan's stare burning into me. I was just lucky to spot potential before others did. Though I suppose years of studying market patterns helps. Don't be humble, James chided. You have a PhD in art history from Columbia and an MBA from Wharton. Not exactly luck. The color drained from Ryan's face completely. A PhD and MBA. The girl he dismissed as a dreamer had 2 Ivy League graduate degrees. Columbia and Wharton, Ryan repeated faintly. When did you? After we broke up, I said simply. I decided I needed to understand the business side if I wanted to succeed. Broke up. James looked between us with sudden understanding. I see. The awkwardness was palpable. Melissa looked back and forth like watching tennis, sensing drama but not understanding context. Well, Ryan said, clearing his throat, this has been enlightening. But we should probably… Actually, James interrupted. Before you go, I wanted to ask about your gallery. Victoria mentioned you run one in Los Angeles. We're always looking for West Coast partnerships. Perhaps you could tell me about your current artists? If Ryan looked uncomfortable before, he now looked like he wanted to disappear. But James waited expectantly, and there was no graceful deflection. Well, Ryan began uncertainly, we represent diverse contemporary voices. Very cutting-edge work. How exciting. Anyone in particular we should know about? Ryan's mouth opened and closed. We're finalizing representation agreements with several promising artists. Paperwork isn't complete, so I can't discuss specifics. James nodded politely, but I could see skepticism. After 20 years in the art world, he spotted evasion easily. Of course. When those agreements are finalized, please send portfolios. We're always interested in new talent. Absolutely, Ryan said quickly. I'll have my assistant send something next week. Wonderful. Victoria, could you give him our submission guidelines? I smiled sweetly. Of course. Ryan, the Morrison Foundation requires minimum 10 pieces per artist, complete provenance documentation, exhibition history, and 3 independent appraisals for work over $50,000. Our review committee meets quarterly, and the waiting list is currently 18 months. Ryan swallowed hard. 18 months. That's thorough. Quality takes time, James shrugged. But I'm sure someone with your experience understands. At that moment, a server approached carrying champagne. His foot caught a decorative rug, and he stumbled, sending champagne splashing across Ryan's jacket. Oh my goodness, the server exclaimed, pulling out a napkin. I'm so sorry, sir. It's fine, Ryan said tersely, face flushed with embarrassment. The champagne left a large wet stain across his supposedly expensive suit. Perhaps you should visit the men's room, I suggested helpfully. Paper towels might help. Ryan nodded curtly and excused himself, leaving Melissa with us looking deeply uncomfortable. So, James said conversationally, how long have you and Ryan been together? About 6 months, Melissa replied, fidgeting. We met at yoga in Beverly Hills. How nice. What do you do? I'm an influencer. Instagram, TikTok. About 200,000 followers. Fascinating. What sort of content? Lifestyle stuff. Fashion, fitness, travel. Ryan's been helping me break into art. He says there's money in it if you know the right people. I exchanged a glance with James. The picture was becoming clearer. The art world can be lucrative, I agreed. Though it requires significant expertise to navigate. That's what Ryan says. He's always talking about big deals, important clients. Though honestly, sometimes I wonder. She trailed off uncertainly. Wonder what? James asked gently. Well, he talks big, but we're always short on money. He says all his assets are tied up in inventory, but I don't know. His gallery space is tiny, and I've never seen these important clients he mentions. My heart went out to her. She was beginning to doubt Ryan's stories, just as I had years ago. Gallery business can be volatile, I said diplomatically. Cash flow issues are common for smaller operations. Maybe, Melissa said, unconvinced. He keeps promising we'll move somewhere bigger, that he's about to close some major deal. But it's been the same story for months. Ryan returned, jacket still damp but cleaner. His expression was tense, and I could see he'd overheard part of the conversation. Ready to go, Mel? He asked tightly. Actually, Melissa said, I was talking to Victoria and James about art business. Did you know Victoria has a PhD from Columbia? Ryan's jaw clenched. Yes, she mentioned that. And she works with the Morrison Foundation on $2 billion acquisitions, Melissa continued, clearly impressed. That's incredible, right? You always talk about big deals, but this is actually big. The comparison was unmistakable, and Ryan's face darkened. Success comes in many forms, he said stiffly. Not everyone needs massive institutions to make impact. Of course not, I agreed smoothly. Independent galleries play crucial roles. They're often where the most innovative work happens, where artists can take risks without commercial pressures. Ryan struggled to determine if I was being genuine or condescending. Exactly, he said uncertainly. We pride ourselves on giving artists freedom to explore without compromise. That's admirable, James said. Must be challenging balancing artistic integrity with business realities. It is, Ryan agreed, relaxing slightly. But that separates real galleries from corporate approaches. I felt irritation at the implied criticism, but kept my expression neutral. Different approaches work for different situations, I said. Some artists thrive with structure and resources, others prefer more intimate settings. The word intimate was carefully chosen, and Ryan's eyes narrowed at the subtle implication about his operation's size. Speaking of resources, James said, Victoria mentioned your expansion plans. New York's exciting, though real estate costs alone must be significant. Ryan's discomfort returned. We're still evaluating options. Smart approach, James nodded. Location is everything. Victoria spent months finding the right space for elevation. Where are you considering? Several neighborhoods, Ryan said vaguely. We want the perfect fit. Of course. Victoria, where is elevation located again? Chelsea. About 4,000 square feet on West 24th Street. Prime Gallery District, excellent foot traffic. 4,000 square feet, Melissa repeated, eyes wide. That's huge. Ryan, didn't you say your current space was? Different cities have different requirements. Ryan cut her off quickly. Los Angeles operates differently than New York. I could see him spiraling, trying to maintain his image while reality became obvious. Part of me felt sorry for him, but another part, the part that remembered crying alone in Brooklyn, felt cold satisfaction. Well, I said, checking my watch, I should find the auction committee. We're presenting the David Chen piece tonight. The Chen piece? Ryan asked despite himself. A new work created specifically for tonight. Estimated between 3 and 5 million, but I expect higher. David's work appreciates about 40% annually. Ryan went pale. 3 to 5 million for a single piece by an artist he'd never heard of. That's impressive, he managed. David's trajectory has been remarkable, I agreed. When I discovered him, he was painting murals for $300 each. Last month, one sold at Sotheby's for $2.8 million. How did you know he had that potential? It was genuine, asked without usual arrogance. For a moment, I saw the Ryan who had once been passionate about art. Years of study, I said honestly. Understanding market trends, recognizing technical skill, seeing how artists' work fits broader contemporary conversations. And luck. But also instinct, James added. Victoria sees something others miss. It's not just education, it's talent. Ryan was quiet, processing this. I used to think I had that, he said finally, so quietly I almost didn't hear. Maybe you did, I replied. Maybe you still do. Our eyes met, and for an instant, years fell away. I could see the young man who had once been enthusiastic about art, convinced he could change the world. Before ambition twisted into arrogance, before shortcuts replaced hard work. Victoria, James said gently, we should head to the auction hall. Presentation starts in 10 minutes. Of course. I turned back to Ryan and Melissa. It was interesting seeing you again, Ryan. I hope things work out with your expansion plans. Thank you, he said, and I heard multiple layers of meaning. As we walked away, I heard Melissa behind us. Who is that woman, really? And why do I feel there's more to this story? The auction was a triumph. David Chen's piece sold for $4.7 million to a Hong Kong collector. As I watched the bidding war, I felt deep satisfaction, not just financial success, but seeing an artist I believed in receive deserved recognition. 3 months later, Ryan appeared at my gallery unannounced. He looked different. Gone were expensive clothes and forced confidence. Wearing jeans and a simple shirt, he seemed lighter, more relaxed. "I hope you don't mind me stopping by," he said. "I wanted to thank you." "Thank me? For what?" "For that conversation at the gala. It was the wake-up call I needed." He settled into the chair across from my desk. I did what I said. Enrolled in arts administration at UCLA. Also working part-time at the Broad Museum, starting from the bottom as gallery attendant. "Ryan, that's wonderful." For the first time in years, I feel like I'm learning, growing instead of maintaining an image. He paused. "I also broke up with Melissa. Or rather, she broke up with me after I told her the truth." "How did she take it?" "Better than expected. She'd been having doubts for months. Said she was relieved to finally understand." He smiled ruefully. "She's dating a personal trainer now. Someone who actually is what he says he is." We talked for an hour about his studies, his new perspective, his plans. It was the first real conversation we'd had since we were together. "Do you ever think about what might have happened if things went differently?" Ryan asked as he prepared to leave. "If I'd been more supportive, less threatened?" I considered carefully. "Sometimes. But honestly, I don't think we were right for each other, even if you'd been different. We were at different development stages. You needed to figure out who you were without shortcuts, and I needed to learn self-belief without external validation." "So you don't regret how it ended?" "I regret the pain at the time. But no, I don't regret that it ended. We both needed to grow separately before becoming who we were meant to be." Ryan nodded slowly. "The person I was 7 years ago didn't deserve someone like you. Maybe the person I'm becoming will deserve someone equally amazing, but different." "I think you will," I said, meaning it. A year later, I received an invitation to a group exhibition at the Broad Museum featuring emerging artists. Ryan's name was listed as co-curator. I attended the opening, curious about his new approach. The exhibition was thoughtfully curated, featuring genuinely talented but unknown artists. The presentation showed deep understanding of both artwork and audience. I found Ryan enthusiastically explaining pieces to visitors. His passion was evident and genuine, completely different from the forced expertise he used to project. When he spotted me, his face lit up. "Victoria, I'm so glad you came. Congratulations. This is excellent work." "Thank you. It feels good to be part of something meaningful again." He gestured toward a large abstract painting. "Actually, there's someone I'd like you to meet." He led me to a young woman nervously adjusting her work's lighting. "Carmen Rodriguez, meet Victoria Sterling from Elevation Arts." "Victoria, Carmen is one of the most talented painters I've encountered." I studied the painting. Bold, confident brushstrokes creating emotionally powerful yet technically sophisticated composition. "This is beautiful work. How long have you been painting?" "About 10 years, but only showing publicly for 2, Carmen replied. "Ryan's right about your talent. Have you considered gallery representation?" Carmen's eyes widened. Yes, of course, but I wasn't sure. Come by my gallery next week. I'd love to see more." After exchanging information with Carmen, I pulled Ryan aside. "She's very talented. Where did you find her?" "She was working as docent here. I noticed her sketching during breaks and asked to see more." Ryan smiled. "I'm finally learning to spot real talent instead of chasing what I think will sell. That's the secret. Follow the art, and business follows." As I was leaving, Ryan walked me to the entrance. "I have something to tell you," he said. "I'm seeing someone. Lisa, she's an art history professor at UCLA. We met in one of my classes." "That's wonderful, Ryan. I'm happy for you." She knows our history, everything. I've been completely honest from the beginning. He paused. It's terrifying and liberating. Honesty usually is. I wanted you to hear it from me first. You're still important to me, as a friend, as someone who knew me when, as someone who helped me become better even when you didn't mean to. I felt warmth that had nothing to do with romantic feelings. It was satisfaction of seeing someone you once cared about finally becoming who they were capable of being. Thank you for telling me. And Ryan? I'm genuinely happy you found someone who appreciates who you really are. 2 years later, James and I were married in a small ceremony in the Morgan Library Garden. It was intimate, focusing on commitments, meaning rather than spectacle. During the reception, I was surprised to see Ryan arrive with Lisa. I had sent an invitation on impulse, and somehow it felt right having him there, a reminder of how far we'd both traveled. Congratulations, he said when he reached us during receiving line. You look radiant. Thank you for coming. James, this is Ryan Blackwood, the friend I told you about. Ryan, my husband James Morrison. The men shook hands warmly. No awkwardness, no tension. Just two people who cared about me celebrating a happy moment. And this must be Lisa, I continued. Lisa Chin, she said with warm smile. I've heard so much about you. Ryan speaks of you with such respect and gratitude. We chatted about Ryan's studies, Lisa's research, Carmen Rodriguez's upcoming exhibition. The conversation felt natural, completely free of undercurrents that once made any interaction feel charged. We should let you get back to other guests, Ryan said eventually. But Victoria, I wanted to give you this. He handed me a small, elegantly wrapped package. Inside was a sketch, a drawing of our old Brooklyn apartment, focused on the corner where I used to paint. It was beautifully executed, capturing not just physical details, but somehow the essence of that time. I drew it from memory, Ryan explained. I wanted to capture that space where you first started becoming who you were meant to be. It wasn't happy for either of us, but it was important. Where you learned to fight for your dreams. I felt tears prick my eyes. Ryan, this is beautiful. Thank you, he replied. For everything. For showing me what real success looks like, for forgiving me when I didn't deserve it, for being an example of never giving up on yourself. After they left, James found me in a quiet garden corner, still holding the sketch. That was unexpectedly touching, he said, settling beside me. 7 years ago, if someone said Ryan would be at my wedding giving thoughtful gifts and genuinely celebrating my happiness, I'd have thought they were insane. People can change. Not always, and not without effort, but when they really want to, they can become completely different versions of themselves. We both did. I became stronger, more confident, more focused. He became more honest, humble, authentic. We had to break apart completely before we could both become whole. Sometimes the worst thing that happens becomes the best thing that ever happened, but only in retrospect, and only if you're willing to do the hard work of becoming who you're meant to be. James kissed my temple gently. Are you ready to start writing the next chapter? I looked around at the garden full of people I loved, at the man beside me who supported every dream, at the life I'd built through determination and self-belief. More than ready, I said. Victoria's story isn't just about overcoming betrayal or achieving success. It's about transformation that happens when you stop trying to prove yourself to people who don't matter and start building a life reflecting your true values. It's about learning that the best revenge isn't hurting those who hurt you. It's becoming so genuinely happy that revenge becomes irrelevant. In the end, both Victoria and Ryan had to lose everything they thought they wanted before discovering what they actually needed. They had to become strangers before becoming friends. They had to let their old story end completely before beginning the stories they were truly meant to tell. That's the art of rising, not just bouncing back from failure, but using failure as foundation for something stronger, more authentic, and more beautiful than anything you could have built on original plans. The greatest success isn't proving your enemies wrong. It's becoming so completely yourself that their opinions no longer have power to define you.